All right. Hey, everybody. April here again. Do some beginning yoga poses with you. So get your blocks, get your yoga mat. And today we are going to do back bending poses. We're going to start with some gentle, more beginner back bends, and then we will move into some more advanced back bending poses. So do these the best that you can. As well, if you have any, back issues, maybe stay away from the really deep ones. All right. So usually back bends are done. You want to make sure that you're really nice and warm in your body. So if you need to do a little warm up, give yourself a moment to do that first before we just go into these. I'm already in a very warm room and a warm space. I've been practicing a little bit of yoga today as well, so I'm already warmed up. So if you need that, give yourself that. Okay, otherwise, we begin, right? So the first back bend we're going to learn is Cobra Pose, okay? So this one requires us to be on our belly. These first few that we're going to do are us on our belly. So get on your mat, on your belly, and Cobra Pose. Okay, well, here we go, all right? Let's do our best. So I'm lying flat on my belly. And I'm going to bring my toes to touch. This is my snake tail back behind me. Now, if your back is tighter, your low back is tighter, you could bring your feet a little further away. Right? And I want the tops of my feet on the floor. And again, my toes are touching. My big toes are touching to start in Cobra. And of course, as I just mentioned, if you know that you're tighter in your low back, bring your feet further apart. And you'll notice my hands. My hands are about by my chest. And as you become more advanced in your Cobra pose, you'll actually slide your hands further back towards your hips, right? So when you're just beginning, maybe the hands start by the shoulders, okay? Always notice when I plant my hands down, my fingers are spread, my hands are big, right? I'm creating more surface area with my hands and therefore more support, all right? So also a few things before we get into our Cobra, of course, is that my elbows, notice my elbows are hugging my sides. I'm streamlining my body like a snake, right? So I'm going to show you the beginner variation of Cobra, which is starting from here. I then, on my exhale, I push into my hands, and I lift my heart, I lift my belly just barely off the floor. My belly button is just barely off the floor. So I'm beginning Cobra. You're just low, right? And I can feel my toes, my feet want to spread a little bit, so I let my feet spread a little bit apart. I keep my elbows in. What is common in Cobra is that the shoulders shrug up towards the ears. Keep the shoulder blades pulling back and down, right? Also, it's a common thing for people who want to tip their head back in Cobra. You can see how my voice just changed when I did that because I can't breathe, right? So I keep my chin slightly tucking to my chest. You can hear how my voice again opened up my airway so I can breathe here. I'm just lifting my heart in my Cobra. Now I'm going to come back down. If you've been here for another breath or two, go ahead and relax. We're going to try our Cobra again. Now, as you become more advanced in your Cobra, like I mentioned, you could slide your hands a little further back towards the ribs, towards the hips, as you become, again, a little bit more stronger through the upper body. Take a big breath in as you exhale, again, pushing into the hands and maybe lifting up a little bit higher, so getting more of a back bend. My chin is still slightly tucking towards my chest. I'm going to close my eyes, relax my jaw, and breathe my Ujjayi breaths. Cobra pose. And if you can, one more breath here. Exhale, slowly release. Good. You can turn your head to one side. Let the arms relax next to you. Since we're here, we're going to move into our next back bending pose, which is the locust pose. And for locust, I'm going to start with a big breath in. As I exhale, just like Cobra, I'm going to exhale, lift my torso up off the floor, but without the use of my hands, and use my arms, right? Or reach my arms straight back behind me, right? And now for full locust pose, I'm going to lift my legs. All right, I'm going to breathe. And of course, if there's tightness in the low back, the feet will go a little further out. You want the feet to be kind of in line with the hips. So I'm just lifting my legs. I'm lifting my upper body up off the floor. Strengthening the spine, these back bends. And same thing here. I keep my chin slightly tucking towards my chest just so that I can breathe really well in my locust, traditional locust. And of course, the stronger and more open your back muscles become, the higher up you can lift off the floor in locust pose. Good. Take another breath in. As you exhale, go ahead, bring the feet down, bring the head down, turn the head to the other side. Give yourself a little rest. So the next pose while we're here is the Sphinx pose, okay? So this is another one. If your low back is tight, you can bring your feet a little further apart towards the edges of the mat, okay? The more open that you get and stronger back muscles you get, the toes will come closer together. So for Sphinx pose, I'm going to plant my hands under my shoulders here. I'm going to push into my hands, lift up through my cobra, and actually make my way onto my elbows and my forearms, okay? When you get to Sphinx pose, the elbows should stack right underneath the shoulders here. So line it up, always stacking bones when we can in our yoga practice. And then the hands, you'll notice I have my hands in line, my wrists in line with my elbows, okay? So I'm pushing into my forearms, I'm pushing into my hands, as well as down through my elbows to get this lift, right? I'm not sinking my chest or sinking my heart. I'm lifting and lengthening, in fact, from my pubic bone, which is on the floor, all the way up the length of my heart, up to my heart space and my collarbone, right? So I'm opening and lifting there. You can slightly engage your belly. This might help with some low back. Again, if you are sensitive in your spine, you could come lower by bringing your forearms a little further away from the body, and that will maybe release a little of the tension in the low back. Or, like I had mentioned before, just bring the feet further apart, right? And breathe, right? The hands can stay here, or sometimes we like to do Anjali Mudra, prayer position with the hands. We breathe, right? Broaden across the upper back. That's right. Press into the hands, press into the elbows, whatever is touching the earth. Notice what a good position for the feet is. Ujjayi breath. Slightly tuck the chin towards the chest. Always keep the back of the neck nice and long, especially in your back bend. Right? And you can do that experiment if you want, right? When you tip your head back, it's nice maybe for a breath, right? To open fully on the front, but as you exhale, then drop the chin back towards the chest. It's going to help you breathe. And you're breathing from your belly up into your heart space in your Sphinx pose, in every pose. Good, once you get to at least 3 breaths. On your next exhale, you can slowly lower down. Let your elbows splay wide. Stack your hands in front of your head. Make a little pillow for your head to rest on. Okay, now we're doing just kind of flying through these back bending poses. Take your time and give yourself any rest in between extra time that you need. All right, because the next one we're going to do is upward facing dog. Okay, so I'm here on my belly. Now I'm going to plant my hands back underneath my shoulders, right? I'm going to keep my elbows in and the tops of the feet are on the floor. So I'm going to push up like through my cobra, right? So in upward facing dog, the only thing touching the floor is my hands and my feet. My knees, this might be hard to tell because I kind of have baggy pants here. Let's see. Maybe the camera angle, I'll pull them up. So when I'm in my full upward facing dog, right, my toes are in line with my hips, my knees are not on the floor, and I've got a little back bend here, right? My hands and my feet are the only thing on the floor in my upward facing dog. My hips are sinking, but not fully, right? I'm engaging my belly, and I'm, again, looking forward, but without tipping my head all the way back, right? You can tip the head back a little bit, right? But I like to keep my chin slightly tucking so that I can breathe better. Upward facing dog, the breath starts down in my belly, draws up into the heart. And as I push into my hands, right, I'm opening across the back, I'm opening across my heart space, and I'm breathing. Yeah, and I have a lot of upper body strength as well. Here, my arms are getting a little wobbly, my fingers are spread also, so it's not just my wrist taking my body weight. These are doing so good. Take another breath in, upward facing dog. Exhale, you can release. Bring the knees down, come down onto the belly, go through low cobra just for fun, and then stack those hands back in front of you, resting on the belly. And when you get all the way to the floor, a little low back release by just kind of swaying or wagging the tail a little bit. Good. If your hands and wrists need some release too, you can come up off the hands and just do some circles with the hands and wrists. Right? Always give yourself a moment in between. The next pose we're going to do is called the bow pose, and we're going to do it in a couple different parts to make sure that we're very ready for this. So first, I'm just going to turn my head to one side. You're going to bend one knee and then bend the other knee and reach back with your hands and see if you can hold onto your feet. Okay, and before we go into our back bend, we're just going to do a little leg stretch here to open up the tops of the thighs, the quads. So if you can reach here, you're going to hold the tops of the feet and you're going to pull your heels in towards your tail. Okay, now if you can't quite reach, I don't have my strap, but you could put the strap around the tops of the feet or a sock or something like that to hold onto, right, to help you, to assist you in pulling the heels and getting that quad stretch. Okay, and of course, if you're really, really open, you could even press the heels towards the outside of the hips, and that's going to give you that nice deep stretch. So I'm just staying in this kind of bow prep shape. I'm feeling a beautiful stretch on my quad muscles on the fronts of my thighs, right? Good. So after a breath or two here, then I can start to think about what I'm going to do in my bow pose. And I'm going to take us through this very, very slowly, very carefully. Okay, so here in my bow, I'm holding onto my feet. Now I'm going to take my hands, slide my hands down, or actually up to my ankles, right? And once my hands get around my ankles, I'm going to flex my feet back. Right? You see that? I flex my feet back. Okay? So I want to actually be holding on to my low shin, right at the ankle. Okay, you'll notice I have my forehead on the mat. I'm going to take a breath in. And to come into bow pose, as I exhale, I'm going to push my legs, my ankles into my hands. And notice as I do that, my heart lifts. Yes, my chest lifts. So it's a big heart opener, assisted heart opener. I like to, again, keep my chin towards my chest versus tipping my head too far back because, again, I can't quite breathe that well. So I tuck my chin slightly and breathe, right? I feel this opening across my chest. Some fun things in my upper back, bow. And the more advanced you get in this, the further you can lift your body off the floor. Now, try not to let the knees splay wide when you get here. Imagine you're squeezing a block in between those thighs. So the legs just kick straight back for bow. And of course, I breathe. I close my eyes. I breathe. Oh, I'm having so much fun. This back bend. Strong spine, long spine. Good. One more inhale in your bow pose. And exhale, slowly release the head back down. You can release the legs. And just give yourself a rest on the floor. Turn your head to one side. Or you can stack your hands and make a little pillow for your head. But just giving yourself a little rest so the spine comes back into neutral. Beautiful. You can wag your tail, kind of swivel your hips against the floor a little bit. Good. So after our bow pose, we're going to make our way up to our hands and knees. Okay, so curl your toes, come up into tabletop. Okay? Come up into tabletop. And we will do a big back release at the end, but not quite yet. Okay? Because next is puppy pose. And puppy pose is actually a good neutralizing for all this back bending, but puppy pose can also be a back bend in itself. Okay, so we'll go through that, of course. So from hands and knees, my tabletop. Remember, in tabletop, you want everything in alignment, knees underneath the hips and the shoulders over the wrists, right? So for puppy pose, I'm going to slide my hands all the way forward towards the front of my mat, right? And I'm going to push into my hands. I'm actually going to step or slide my knees back a little bit as well to give myself some room. I push into my hands, and notice when I push into my hands, I've created this nice long spine, and then I can lower my head, I can lower my chest, yes, and if you can, you're going to get your forehead all the way down to the mat. If not, you could grab one of your blocks and just do puppy pose with your head resting on a block, okay? So then there's all types of variations, and I'm going to go through each one of those with you. So if you have your head on a block and you're resting, stay there. If you can go further and get your third eye, your forehead all the way to the floor, you're going to come down. Okay, now for some of us, this is our puppy pose, and this is it, right? But since we're talking about back bending, we're going to go into our back bending variation. So if you are in puppy pose now, and you'll see I'm pressing into my hands, I'm reaching my tailbone back, and there is a little bit of an arch, so I'm sticking my tail up. I'm sticking my tail back. All right, so I can wag my tail. Good. So now I'm going to drop my elbows down to the mat, to the floor. My elbows are down. And to make this a bigger back bend, I'm going to lift my head up off the floor. And then instead of my third eye, my forehead on the floor, I'm going to tip my head back so my chin is on the floor or close to it. Or some of you, it might just be your nose. Right now, as I talked about, when I start to bring my chin towards the mat, it makes it a little bit harder for me to breathe. So I want you to notice that. If it is, just breathe slower, or maybe come back to the variation where just maybe the nose is touching the mat, or maybe that third eye again. And so the further that you stick your tailbone out, the deeper back bend you get. You might even be able to slide your hands a little bit more forward, getting a little bit of a deeper arch in the spine. This is a back bend pose, our back bend variation of puppy pose. I love this pose. It's usually good for all levels of students because you can get into this back bend kind of as deep as you want to, depending on your body, right? So this one also gets the arms. I feel this in my triceps. I can feel my upper back kind of opening and spreading and getting some nice openness across my collarbones too. So not just a spine opener, but for the whole upper body in puppy pose. Good. So if you're back on your chin, you can lift your head up, come back to the third eye. If you're down on your elbows, you're going to push into the hands, lift the elbows off the mat. Good. We're going to come back up into our tabletop pose. So bring the spine up, walking the hands back in, walking the knees back in. Beautiful. So got a couple more. We're going to do our camel pose next, and then we'll flip over and come onto our back, and we'll do bridge pose. All right. So camel pose is a big back bend. It's a good thing we've been warming up to it. I use my blocks in camel pose, so I'm going to teach with the blocks, all right? And not everybody needs the blocks, but I do. So try it with the blocks first is what I'm trying to say. Try it with the blocks first, and then, work towards no blocks, all right? So here we go. For camel pose, I'm going to move kind of towards the front of my mat, and I actually like to usually do camel pose with my chest or my belly against the wall, but we're not going to do that today. So if you do have a wall that you could do this in front of, maybe try that, because that will help keep your hips forward when we get there, okay? So what I'm going to do is actually bring my blocks. I'm going to curl my toes under behind me, and I'm going to bring my blocks right next to my ankle, okay? That's where my hands are going to go eventually, okay? So right by my feet and ankles. Line them up, okay? First thing I'm going to do for camel pose is place my hands on my low back here, on my sacrum here, and I'll just turn to show you. I have my hands on my low back, right? And I'm pushing down on my sacrum, okay? So from the side, let me show you again what that looks like, right? So I have my hips over my knees, and I place my hands on my low back. I push down on my sacrum. I'm pushing down, and as I push down on my sacrum, notice my hips kind of go forward. That's what you want. I want my hip bones to stay, my femurs to stay lined up over my knees here, right? Sometimes I go back into camel and my hip, my femur goes way back behind my knee. We don't want that, right? That's why I like the wall, because it reminds me to keep my hips forward, okay? So hands on the low back, I press down on my sacrum. That keeps my pelvis forward, my pubic bone forward, and the heads of my femurs stacked over my knees, okay? And so with that, then I can kind of see how far back I can bend first, right? And then I should be able to just reach back. Oh, look at that. And there's one block and there's the other. Okay? So this is camel pose, and this is another one. I like to keep my chin towards my chest. Some people want to open even more across the front of the neck, which is fine if you want to. Gently, carefully, slowly tip the head back. Right? Whenever we're throwing or flinging our head around, especially in yoga, for a breath or two. But again, I like to be able to breathe maximally, so I keep my chin towards my chest. And I breathe my hips, my pelvis forward. All right? And so if you don't need the blocks, you can put your hands all the way back onto the ankles, okay? and my toes are curled under as you become more and more advanced in this pose, right? The heart opens, I'm squeezing and rolling my shoulder blades together. And close my eyes and I breathe. In my camel pose. Good. So I like to imagine that someone is lifting me up out of this pose, like I have a tether or a rope attached to my sternum, and someone's just lifting me up. Yeah, so coming up out of this pose, reaching from the front. I can feel some fun things happening in my low back. So I know sometimes the immediate response is to want to fold forward. Not yet. We'll get there. We'll get a good release after we do all of this, okay? So just sit back on your heels, sit through hero's pose if you can, just for a moment, okay? That's camel, right? To me, it's a very advanced back bend, all right? So we just sit back just like this to let our spine kind of neutralize. We got one more on the floor, and then we will, and then we'll do our like wind down, cool down, and neutralize the spine. Okay, so from our hero pose, we're going to come forward into our tabletop, and if you can, you're going to cross your ankles behind you and walk your hands in and sit back into easy pose. Okay, if you can. If not, if you can't do that, if your body doesn't allow, you just kind of walk your legs to the side, your hands around, and come back to seated. Okay, so we're going to come from our easy pose to seated, and we're going to maybe do a couple spinal rolls. I just like to do those. Also, after back bending, it might feel good on the spine. Okay, just a couple spinal rolls. We're eventually going to meet with our backs flat on the mat. Okay, nice and easy, nice and slow. All right, our final back bend today is bridge pose. Okay, so there's all different types of ways to do bridge. We're going to keep it very basic, and we're going to use a block. All right, I'm going to take the block and, in fact, take the block and squeeze it between my inner thighs. Okay, and this just activates my legs. I'm going to make sure that my knees and my ankles here line up. So if your feet are further away, slide them closer, just so that the ankles under the knees. Also make sure that the feet are not wider than the hips. You want to make sure that the heels line up with your sit bones underneath here, okay? Once you have this formation, this alignment in the lower body, we can start to think about the upper body, right? So I've got my block squeezing between my inner thighs. It's going to activate my legs. My hands are going to be planted right here next to my sides. I'm going to take a big inhale. And as I exhale, I push down through my feet, keep that block squeezing, and I lift up. And you'll notice as soon as I get up here, my shoulders are going to kind of roll underneath a little bit more. Shoulder blades roll underneath. And then you can play what's happening with the hands, right? My arms are really long and my torso is really short, so I can touch my ankles. If you can, awesome. If you can't, that's fine too, right, in my bridge. If you want to go more for your upper body, interlace your fingers under here, roll the shoulders even more towards one another, and try to keep those hands pressing down into the earth. Now, what's happening through your feet and ankles? Push down through all 10 toes. Sometimes in bridge, our feet start to do weird, wonky things. Are your toes turning out? Turn them to face ankles, knees. Keep the knees engaged by squeezing that block a little bit more. The chin tucking towards the chest. All right, try not to turn your head in your bridge at all. It could be a little intense on the neck here. And as you breathe, your ujjayi breaths in your bridge, squeeze the booty a little bit, squeeze those gluteus muscles. Yeah, we get a bigger bend in our back. Good. And as I breathe way up into my collarbones, my chest comes closer to my chin. Beautiful. In our bridge pose. So after 3 to 5 breaths in your bridge, if your hands are interlaced underneath you, fingers interlaced, you're going to release the hands back, palms flat. Your feet are flat on the mat now, so we're going to inhale, come up onto our tiptoes first, lift up the heels, scoop the tailbone under, and as you exhale, then lower down to the floor, shoulder blades first, middle back, then low back comes down. And once you get all the way to the mat, you're going to lay flat, move the block to the side. Just take a moment, drop the knees from one side up and over to the other, kind of neutralizing the spine first. Now that we did all of our back bending poses, we're going to do a little rest and again, even more neutralizing. Side to side with the knees first. Good. Now bring the feet up off the floor. Hug the knees in towards the chest. It's going to release the low back even more and gently rock side to side. Nice and easy, nice and slow. Good. Maybe you can draw a little half circles. Nice. So I think that one of the best things you can do after doing lots of back bends like that is twisting. So we're going to do reclining twists, and then we're going to do our corpse pose just to feel our practice in here. So from our neutral spine, the knees are still up over the belly. We're going to open our arms nice and wide, spread those wings, take a big breath in. Just a basic reclining twist. As you exhale, drop the legs to the right, all the way over, get the feet down, get the knees down as much as you can. Turn the head to the left, okay? So legs to the right, head to the left. Close your eyes and take 5 deep Ujjayi breaths in and out through the nose. Back bending or heart opening. It's one of the most extreme movements we can make in our body. In fact, they say that back bending is also anti-aging. As we get older, we want to round and close our hearts. Right? Spine sits round forward and hunch over. And so when we bend backwards and keep our hearts open, it keeps us young, it keeps us bright, it keeps us youthful. So if it was challenging for you today, that's okay. An opportunity for you to try again. The more you practice these poses, and any pose, the easier it gets. So maybe you can't tell, but you've gotten younger now just by doing today's practice of these poses. One more inhale and exhale. Twist on the side. Good. And when you're ready, slowly, gently, carefully unwind. Turn the head to neutral. Bring the knees back up over your belly. Wrap the arms around the legs gently. Hug the knees in. Rock gently side to side. Just notice the difference from one side to the other. And get ready to twist the other way. Open those arms up one more time. Big breath in. And as you exhale, drop those legs over to the left. Legs to the left. Head turns towards the right. And close the eyes and breathe. Relax the face and the jaw. And take the biggest, deepest breath you've taken all day. Good. As always, make sure that you feel evenly twisted on this side. If you are a little tighter, stay another breath or two here. That's fine. When you feel evenly twisted on this side, begin to unwind. Begin to slowly, gently, carefully bring those knees back to center. Wrap the arms around the legs. Hug those knees in towards the heart. Gently rock the body side to side. For our final pose today, we end with our corpse pose, our legs resting against the floor. Roll our shoulders back underneath the ribs. Let the heart be open. Let the arms rest. Let those feet splay open. Let your eyes close. And your breath return back to its normal pattern and just notice how you feel in your body after doing all that heart opening, all those back bending poses. And we just did a lot. One back bend right after the other. So good job. If you were able to do all of those, good job, self. And if not, that's okay too, right? Just appreciate where your body is today. Relax the face, the jaw, the forehead. Just another